Ever get that feeling like schools are more worried about checking off boxes than actually, like, teaching kids what they need to know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, today we're going to dive deep into the world of education, especially for students with disabilities.
Right.
And we're going to look at literacy.
Okay.
And it's interesting because we always say education's a right, but this article we're looking at today argues that it's more like a contract.
Interesting.
So, schools promise they'll educate kids,
Right.
and we expect in return they'll meet certain standards.
Yeah, makes sense.
Like all those syllabuses, those learning targets they give out at the beginning of the year.
Uh-huh.
And the source we're looking at today, this article by Jaime Hoerricks, it's called The Broken Contract, Dyslexia, Literacy, and the Legal Obligation to Educate.
Okay.
And their argument is that schools don't hold up their end of the bargain, especially for students with disabilities.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about this article is that Hoerricks is actually writing from their own experience.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And they actually graduated functionally illiterate.
Wait, hold on. So they graduated high school and couldn't read?
Yeah, so basically they were pushed through the system without actually learning to read.
That seems impossible. How does that even happen?
It's actually more common than you'd think,
Really?
and it kind of shows a big problem.
Okay.
Schools tend to focus more on accommodations instead of finding the root of the problem.
So instead of teaching them to read, they just, give them audiobooks and extra time.
Exactly.
That's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken arm. Doesn't the law, isn't that supposed to help these students?
Yeah, you're totally right. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, says that schools have to provide FEE, a free appropriate public education.
Okay.
Which means they have to create these individualized education programs, the IEPs, for each student.
Gotcha.
But what Hoerricks found is that just having an IEP, it doesn't always mean that a student's actually going to get that support in the classroom.
So it's like a contract that nobody's enforcing.
Exactly.
And Hoerricks went through that themselves.
Yes, they did.
Wow.
When you talk about this story, it's kind of shocking, actually.
Okay.
They were a student athlete,
Uh-huh.
and they were basically just passed from grade to grade, even
Yes.
though they couldn't read.
No way.
Yeah, they even talk about these football classes that were made to keep athletes eligible without having to actually, challenge them academically.
So they were putting sports before actual learning. That's messed up.
Yeah, it definitely brings up some questions about priorities, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's not just about one student either.
Okay.
This whole accommodations over literacy thing, it's a much bigger problem.
Okay.
A systemic issue, really.
Gotcha.
And they argue that a lot of teachers just aren't prepared to teach reading very well, especially to students who learn differently.
Like students with dyslexia.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so what's the problem with the teacher training then? How do they not know how to teach kids to read?
Well, the thing is, a lot of teacher prep programs, they depend way too much on this one method. It's called the science of reading.
Okay.
It's a phonics-based approach,
Uh-huh.
and it works for some kids, but not all.
Like those with dyslexia.
Yeah, especially kids with dyslexia.
So it's like they're trying to make every kid fit into the same box when we all learn in different ways.
Oh, yeah,
And Hoerricks, didn't they see this themselves when they were a teacher?
they did.
Okay.
And they talk about this pressure they felt to pass students, even if they hadn't actually learned the material.
To avoid issues with the administrators.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically the system's encouraging them to just push kids through.
Pretty much.
That's a bummer. But I feel like there's got to be a legal side to this too, right? Like some court cases that could change things?
Yeah, you're right on track, Lee. There are the big legal cases that are really starting to change things for these students.
Okay.
One of the biggest ones is Endrew F. Douglas County School District.
Oh, yeah, I think I read about that one. Wasn't it about, making schools do more for kids with IEPs?
Exactly.
Okay.
Before Endrew F., schools could get away with just giving a basic level of education to students with disabilities. They could argue that as long as the kid's making a little bit of progress, they're doing what IDEA says.
So they could just show up and that was enough.
Pretty much.
Doesn't seem right.
Right. But in Endrew F., the Supreme Court said, no, that's not enough.
Okay.
They said schools have to give an education that's, and this is a mouthful, reasonably calculated to enable a child to make progress appropriate in light of the child's circumstances.
So what does that actually mean for kids in the classroom?
Well, it means those IEPs can't just be cookie cutter anymore.
Yeah.
They got to be individualized, really taking into account each kid's needs and goals.
Okay.
And schools have to show that they're actually trying to help these kids, actually make progress.
No more checking boxes.
Exactly.
So does Endrew F., does it talk about literacy specifically?
It kind of laid the groundwork, but there's another case that really focuses on reading.
Okay.
And it's called William A. V. Clarksville Montgomery County School System.
William A., what happened there?
So this case, it was about a student with dyslexia,
Okay.
and he wasn't given any good reading instruction, even though he had an IEP.
So he went through school and never learned to read.
Yeah, think about that.
That's heartbreaking. What did the court do?
They got serious. They ordered that school district to give William 888 hours of tutoring.
888 hours.
Mm-hmm. To make up for all those years of bad teaching.
Wow.
William A. Sent a huge message to schools.
Okay.
You can't let kids graduate without basic literacy skills.
Gotcha.
And if you don't teach them right, you're going to face the consequences.
So these court cases are like showing that the system's broken, but are they actually changing anything in schools?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
Hoerricks says that these legal wins, they're important, but they're only the first step.
Okay.
We need a real change in how we teach reading.
Okay.
And it has to start with teacher training.
Okay, so back to those programs and that science of reading thing.
Right.
What needs to change?
We can't keep teaching every kid the same way. We got to give teachers the tools to support all these different learning styles.
Especially those kids with dyslexia.
Right.
They need more than just sounding out letters.
Exactly. And that means giving teachers more training.
Okay.
Training on how to help struggling readers.
Okay.
They need to know not just what to teach, but how to teach it.
Gotcha.
How to change their teaching for each kid. How to find and fix those learning gaps early on.
So it's making teachers more than just teachers. They're like detectives and problem solvers.
Exactly.
That's cool.
They need the knowledge, the skills, the resources to help every single student learn to read.
But what about parents?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what's their role in all this?
Hoerricks talks a lot about advocating.
Okay.
Parents, they're the ones who can really make a difference.
Okay.
They need to talk about their kids' IEP, understand the laws, and be ready to fight for their kids' needs.
So being more than just a parent, but a partner in their kids' education.
Right.
Okay.
Parents can work with the school,
Yeah.
but they also need to be ready to push back when things aren't right.
Okay.
Like, remember those court cases?
Yeah.
Those were all started by parents who wanted better for their kids.
It takes a lot of courage to go up against the system like that.
It does.
Yeah.
But Hoerricks says knowledge is power.
Makes sense.
The more parents know about their rights, the more they can do for their kids.
Okay, so we talked about the legal stuff, the teacher training, how parents can help. But what's the, like, end goal here? What does a good education system look like?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And Hoerricks leaves us to think about that.
Okay.
They say we can't just follow the law.
Right.
We have to actually make literacy a right for every student.
Right, not a privilege.
Exactly. Yeah, right. Not a privilege. So we've talked about legal stuff and how teachers need to be trained better.
Yeah.
And how parents can advocate for their kids.
Right.
But what are we actually aiming for here?
Yeah, what does a good education system even look like?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And Hoerricks kind of leaves that for us to think about.
Okay.
They say we got to go beyond just doing what the law says.
Okay.
We have to make literacy a right for everyone.
Not just a privilege.
Exactly. So we've uncovered some pretty heavy stuff about literacy.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially for kids with disabilities.
Yeah.
But what can we actually do about it?
Right, because this feels huge. Like, how can we change a whole system?
It's not easy, that's for sure. But the impact of this broken contract, like Hoerricks calls it, it's just too big to ignore.
Yeah, this isn't just about test scores and grades. This is about real kids.
Yeah, real futures.
Exactly.
If you can't read well, it affects everything.
Totally.
Getting a job, understanding your rights, even just getting through the day is so much harder.
You're basically shut out.
Exactly. And for kids with disabilities who are already facing so much, it's like another barrier.
It's not fair.
Not at all. So where do we start?
Yeah, is it all lawsuits and new laws?
Those are definitely important.
Yeah.
But change can start anywhere. Even just with awareness. The more people know about this, the more we can push for schools to do better.
So our listeners can make a difference.
Absolutely. Let's say you're a parent.
Okay.
Start by really looking at your kid's IEP.
Okay.
Make sure it's really for them.
Right.
Ask questions, push back if you need to.
Okay, what if you're not a parent but you still care about this?
There's so much you can do.
Okay.
Support organizations that are working on literacy.
Okay.
Talk to your elected officials. Tell them this is important. Even just talking to friends and family.
Yeah, just spreading the word.
Exactly.
So knowledge and then action.
We don't have to just accept this.
It's empowering to know that.
It is. And Hoerricks asks us this really powerful question.
Okay.
What if literacy was a right?
Not just a privilege.
Right. What if every kid could learn to read well?
How would the world be different?
Exactly.
That's a question I'll be thinking about.
Me too. And hopefully our listeners will too. Exactly. How would the world be different? It's a big question to think about. Yeah, for sure. So we've been talking about
literacy.
Right. Literacy and how important it is.
Yeah, especially for students with disabilities.
Exactly. And, we've talked about the legal stuff and the teacher training. But I think a lot of people are probably wondering, like, what can we do?
Yeah, it feels like a really big problem.
It is. It's a huge problem.
How do you even start to change something like that?
Well, it's not easy, that's for sure.
Right.
But this broken contract,
Mm-hmm.
like Hoerricks calls it,
Uh-huh.
it's too important to just ignore.
You're right, because it's not just about grades.
No, not at
It's
all.
about real kids.
Yeah, their lives.
Their futures.
Exactly. If you can't read well,
Yeah,
it makes everything harder.
for sure.
Getting a job, understanding your rights, even just getting through the day.
It's like you're stuck.
Yeah. And for kids with disabilities, they already face so many challenges.
Exactly.
And then to add this on top of it.
It's not right.
No, it's not fair at all. So what do we do?
Where do we start?
Well, I think a lot of people think it's got to be lawsuits and new laws and
Yes,
stuff.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, those things are important,
Right.
but change can happen in lots of different ways.
Okay.
Even just starting with awareness.
Okay.
The more people who know about this problem,
Uh-huh.
the more we can push schools to do the right thing.
So what you're saying is like our listeners can actually make a difference.
Exactly. They absolutely can.
Okay. How?
Well, let's say you're a parent.
Okay.
You can start by really looking closely at your kid's IEP.
Okay.
Make sure it's really designed for them.
Right.
Don't be afraid to ask questions or even disagree with the school if you need to.
What if you're not a parent, though? Like, can you still do something?
Of course, there's so much you can do.
Like what?
You can support organizations that are focused on literacy.
Okay.
You can talk to your elected officials, tell them that you care about this issue.
Uh-huh.
You can even just talk to your friends and family about it.
Just spread awareness.
Yeah, exactly. So it starts with knowing about the problem.
Right.
And then taking action.
Exactly. And we don't have to just accept this broken system.
Yeah, that's really empowering to know.
It is. And Hoerricks leaves us with this great question to think about.
What is it?
What if literacy was a right for everyone?
Not just a privilege.
Exactly. What if every single child had the chance to learn to read well?
I like that. What would the world be like?
That's something I'm going to keep thinking about.
Yeah, me too. And hopefully everyone listening will too.
I hope so. Because this isn't just about education.
Right. This is about fairness. This is about making sure everyone has the chance to succeed in life.
I love that. And that's a world worth fighting for.
Absolutely it is.
Well, thank you so much for diving deep with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And to everyone listening, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep fighting for a world where every child can read. 30C96.